Hello, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to the Vicki and Carl Zeiger Inside Seminar for Empty Ride. And I'd like to acknowledge Vicki and Carl Zeiger over there. Thank you again for your support. We appreciate you. I'm Kim Montelibano Heil, Associate Artistic Director of the Old Globe. It's nice to be back. I haven't done one of these in a while. So I have to my left here two very esteemed guests. One of them should be familiar to you. She's been up on this stage before. And the other should be very new to you. So I'll start off. So Keiko Green is the writer of Empty Ride. Keiko was also the writer of Exotic Deadly, or the MSG play, which we produced here in 2023. Right? 23? Holy cow. And she has written also other plays such as Sharon, which was produced over at Signet Theater. She also starred in that, if you happen to watch it. She's also written Hell's Canyon and, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember the ones that I've seen. So Sharon, Hell's Canyon, Exotic Deadly, and then coming up is the play that actually just recently was announced as a finalist for the Susan Smith Blackburn Prize in Playwriting. You are cordially invited to The End of the World, which will be premiering at South Coast Rep, just up the road in Orange County. And she is also a writer on the TV series, the Hulu TV series, Interior Chinatown. She's a graduate of the MFA Playwriting Program at UC San Diego. And we're so happy to have her here. Thank you, Keiko.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we also have our director, Sivan Battat, who is the director of many wonderful new plays, such as In the Amazon Warehouse Parking Lot, which premiered at Playwrights Horizons in New York City. She's also directed Wish You Were Here by Sanaz Tusi, who wrote English, which we all remember, at Yale Rep. She directed... oh, goodness, I really thought I had this memorized. No, I want to. Heroes of the Fourth Turning by Will Arbery at Studio Theater in D.C. She was a Roundabout Directing Fellow, a Drama League Directing Fellow, and is one of the TCG Rising Leaders of Color. Ladies and gentlemen, Sivan Battat. I'm so excited to talk about this play. It's very rare. First of all, I should start by saying that some of you may have heard this play in last year's Powers New Voices Festival. Yes, where we read it, and this is an Old Globe commissioned play, which for those of you who don't know what that means, it means that we gave money to Keiko and said, write a play for the Old Globe, Keiko, and it can be about anything. And so, as you can imagine, that might be an intimidating offer to an artist. Oh, goodness gracious, I must create art for this institution. In Keiko's case, we're always excited for whatever it is that she wants to explore, what she wants us to, to read. So this came to us, as I understand it, the very first draft actually arrived the first rehearsal of the Powers New Voices Festival. Is that correct? Last year?
That's right, yes.
Wow.
Yes.
And then we read it, and it went through a lot of changes. And then we presented it at that festival. We then workshopped it again. And then, and so, Keiko, tell us a little bit about what your process has been in discovering this play.
Yeah. So, yes, thank you so much for the amazing intro. So what happened actually with my relationship with the Old Globe was the folks here had read Exotic Deadly, then commissioned me for a play, because they liked Exotic Deadly, and then we did Exotic Deadly at Powers, and then Exotic Deadly was produced here. So I had kind of known that I was going to have a commission even while we were in production, I think. But the curious thing about it was just that, Exotic Deadly was such a specific type of play. It was, coming of age, really youthful, really fast, just a comedy. And I knew that I wanted to do something kind of different, but you feel a little bit of pressure of like, am I supposed to be giving them kind of what they know, what they liked me for last night? There's like you put a kind of strange pressure on yourself. But ultimately, I was like, I want to do something really different. And so I knew I wanted to write a ghost story. I wanted to, so initially I wrote, I had read this ghost story about, this will be like a fun little thing for you all to know. I had read this ghost story about this, in Wakayama. Originally this play was going to be called The Demon of Wakayama. And then it was going to be called Away in the Night. And then now here we are with Empty Red. But originally it was called Demon of Wakayama. And it was about, I was like, okay, there will be a gal who's taking on her dad's taxi, and she picks up like a strange passenger. And that passenger ends up caring for her dad, and then her and her dad disappear, and then she has to go into the underworld. Like, it was like, that is not at all what this play is. So I was actually, because I was excited about this today, I went back and read a bit of my very first draft that didn't even become a full draft. And it was 72 pages. It was a 2-act play. I wrote 70 pages of it, and I was just like, this is a mess. And so I just kind of got stuck with the play. We ended up working on Exotic Deadly, and I got stuck with the play and just couldn't move forward with it for probably about a year or so. And then finally they were like, hey, we have the Powers that's coming up. Do you think you could have a draft of it ready? And I said, no problem. After being stuck with it for a year, truly not being able to like move forward at all. But it was something about knowing that there was a deadline looming. I think I was one of those people. I just was like, okay. All right, and then busted this thing out that is completely different from that original story, and a huge part of that. This is long. I'm sorry, it's so long-winded. But a huge part of that was actually writing something that I was initially kind of nervous about confronting, which is the tsunami that hit really the area that my grandma lived in. And my grandma, she lived in Sendai. She passed away last year at 99 years old. So. Yeah, and there was something about that time of being with my brother, and we were both in New York, and the tsunami had hit, and we were both just kind of like, waiting by our phone, waiting for any kind of updates or info, and you just kind of feel helpless. And I was like, there's something about this that feels like a haunting too, and like going back to where the wreckage had been, and then seeing people rebuild, but also how slow it was. All of that felt like, oh, this is actually like a ghost story. How these terrible incidents can kind of just linger and become part of the land. And I had then read this interesting thing that in one of those areas, all of the taxi drivers had reported that all of them had carried a ghost passenger. Every single taxi driver that was interviewed said that. And so I was like, okay, this is worth exploring. So I brought that first draft in, and that's how it kind of became. That was so long. I'm so sorry.
No. That was great. And I meant to do this earlier. Show of hands for those of you who have already seen the show. Oh, okay. Fantastic. Okay. Well, we're not going to spoil it for you. Yeah. Great. Well, I know that when we had talked about this play, I think when Danielle described it to me, it was just that one sentence pitch of, it's about taxi drivers who, or a taxi driver picked up, they say they picked up a ghost after a tsunami. And I was like, I'm in. I'm sold. Yeah. That's so compelling. And so, and then once we decide we're going to produce this play, the next big task is to find the right director. Now, I have to tell you that directing a new play, directing is hard no matter what. Shakespeare, Moliere, or Lauren Gunderson, any play is going to be difficult to do. A new play, which you're then directing often next to the playwright in the room, presents its own set of challenges. So I would love to know, Sivan, as an expert of working with new plays, I know that we sent your agent the play and asked you to read it. And we were all here in San Diego going, I hope she likes it. I hope she likes it. And tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll rewind and just say Keiko and I had met maybe a year before then.
About a year ago.
Maybe
Like, wasn't it around now?
maybe it was around now. It might have been like a year ago from now, and just like had just really hit it off and like had great conversation about art and art making and theater and sort of like values and the things that matter to us in putting together a play. Because I think you want to find a fit on both ends of this that is like about how you do the project and about your sort of creative vision on the project itself. And so we already kind of had connected on that level, and then yeah, my agent sent me the play, and I remember I have a very vivid memory of sitting at my computer to read it and getting to the first, I'll call it haunting in the play because I don't want to reveal too much, and like having to get up from my computer just for a moment because I was so kind of chilled by the writing on the page. And when that happens, it's just really exciting. I read a lot of new plays. I have the great privilege of reading many, many new plays, and it's really thrilling when something does, when a piece of writing does something to my body. It gets me really excited and makes me want to work on it. So I was really enthusiastic about the play. I found it really funny, and my brain already starts to work in terms of staging and spatially and visually. And so I was kind of already reading the play thinking, and how do you do this taxi? And what do you do for this taxi? And the taxi's always turning, and the taxi's always starting and stopping. And like, how do you do a taxi on stage? And my brain was already going, 100 miles per hour about it. So I was really, really excited when it worked out for me to be here and work on the play. And then finding out it was in the round, I was like, ooh, even more exciting. How do you do a taxi in the round? So we have come up with our way of doing that, which you'll see.
What was the first conversation like between the two of you when you first wanted to start talking about creating this play?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm sure we talked about how we work because I think I'm a very collaborative. Like I think I'm a nice collaborator. but I can be. I'm not a playwright that usually just like sits in the back the whole time. If I'm present, I'm present, and I wanna not help, but I wanna if there's a question I can answer, I'd love to be a part of the conversation. And I know when to step away too, so I'm not there all the time. But so I feel like we did have a big conversation actually about like just how the style of how that's not for every director, playwright like me. So yeah, just really having that conversation about that. And then also I think we talked a lot about our main character Kisa is so untethered. We start the play. This isn't a spoiler. She tells you this right at the beginning of the play that she's in Paris when the tsunami hits Japan, her hometown, and so she kind of missed it. And there's a lot of survivor's guilt, and there's a little bit of like, where is my home anymore? And so I think we talked a lot about like just kind of feeling untethered to location. I think a lot about like identity stuff and kind of feeling like international identity a little bit. What else?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about all those things. I always like to hear from a playwright how they want to be in the room, because that informs how I'll run the process. And so the first time we actually got in a room together was to do the workshop of this, which was in the fall. And so that's also an opportunity for Keiko and I to figure out how we work together in the room. And so some playwrights really prefer to like absolutely not speak in the room while their material is being worked on. They just want to hear what the room of actors is experiencing from the play and what the director is sort of guiding them through, even if it means they walk down a path that the playwright didn't intend, or there are many new things that a group of artists might discover than a playwright thought when they initially wrote the play. And so, that first week of just learning how we work together. And I personally love when the playwright is really involved, because I'm like, you have this vision in your head of this world that you created that I want to serve. And I think directing is a sort of funny thing where someone else generates an entire universe, and then my job is to sort of like ingest that thing well enough that it can like come out of my own pores in the way that they have envisioned it, with sort of my whatever will come as it comes through me. And so I try really hard to get inside of what Keiko is after, or what the writer is after. I think we talked about that a lot. We talked a lot about, the sort of first two big things when you start working on a play together are building your design team. So who are the people who are going to build this visual and sonic world with you? And then casting. So like, who are the people who are going to inhabit the play? So I often find that one of the best ways to get to know what a writer is imagining and the things that they care about as you begin a process is by talking about design. Like, what do you imagine this world to be? How do you think of it? Who are the people who might be able to bring that to life? And I'll bring names to the table, and they'll bring names to the table, and we'll start to talk about who those people are. And then to really get into like, who are these characters and what makes them idiosyncratic and particular, and what makes them who will be the people who will make that play, this particular play sing. And so I think we talked a lot about design and casting, which is a really helpful way to sort of get in the same shared universe together.
I know that both of you have an interest individually in the ghost story form. Tell us a little bit about how ghost stories live in the theater, right? It hasn't been necessarily, I can think of maybe one play that is intentionally a ghost story, but even that play relies on jump scares. And so I'm curious, you know, how if maybe there's a problem there that you both were trying to solve, and like telling a ghost story in a live medium, what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I can say is that I had written a horror before. Hell's Canyon is a horror that premiered in Minneapolis last year, and then is going to have a production in Seattle in the next season. But this isn't a horror play. Just for any of you that were nervous, this isn't a horror play like that. I think something that I was really interested in was actually the kind of something we've talked about a lot in the room and to each other, is the idea that sometimes the thing that we're most scared of is the thing that's most actually just scared. You know, we think about that with like snakes or something, you know, like they're more afraid of you than you are of them. But truly, there's something about like a wail or a screaming or something that is actually, that we're like, oh my God, it's a ghost. That's so scary. But really it's like, oh, that sound actually represents like fear, not fury. And so that's, I think like one thing that we've been really interested in with this is like, it's not a play about jump scares. It's actually about like loss and moving on from loss and it's more about hauntings than it is about ghosts, strangely. And kind of I do think that Japanese culture is also known for ghost stories too, but I also think that there's a really kind of romantic look at ghosts that I don't always see. And one big challenge when I was doing the Powers Festival was like, I wonder if I could write someone just telling a really long ghost story and if that would be interesting. And it really was. So that was something that's always, you know, it's just like, how can I constantly be experimenting with what a ghost play is? Yeah.
I'll just add, like, you know, I really came up on Shakespeare. And there's a lot of ghosts in Shakespeare's plays. It's like one of the archetypes of Shakespeare's tragedies in many cases is that a ghost shows up like 2/3 into the play, and it's like always a really big arrival, and the lights go wild, and you know the like oldest effects in theater are smoke and mirrors, and you know, so how do you take the audience on that journey? And there's actually quite a lot of archetypes for ghosts in the theatrical space, because there's something so haunting about seeing a figure in the distance, and you can do that in theater. You can put a real breathing person and say, nope, that's not real, and sort of what that juxtaposition is really exciting, and it's been fun to play with in the round. But yeah, like the idea of even what a ghost is. Sometimes in the room we call them ghosts. Sometimes I hear myself calling them spirits. And just like presence and what that is, and where the ghosts of the physical ghosts of people lost in this place show up, but where the ghost of memory, the ghost of loss, the ghost of things never followed through on, the ghost of failure, like what are the ghosts of in our lives that are the things that we've never, you know, fully lived into or that kind of slipped through our fingers. I think the play kind of holds a lot of those kinds of ghosts too.
And Sivan, you told me that part of your preparation was watching films.
I did. I watched some, but I'm kind of a scaredy cat.
Well, what did you learn?
Well, you know, I think one of the things that makes things scary is high contrast. So like something very, very quiet and then something very, very loud, right? Or something very, very colorful and then something very, very dark, like high contrast. And I also was super, super attuned to the sonic experience of these films. Like the way a film is scored can make a moment very, very scary. And so that's part of one of the reasons I advocated for the sound designer who's working with us, who is also doing original compositions for the piece, because I felt that there was something that needed to live, a sonic bed that needed to live underneath the play in order to support that level of haunting, that it needed a type of scoring that some plays don't require, that it kind of needed that.
Keiko, you mentioned earlier that there are a lot of paranormal stories in Japanese culture, and I wonder about that, and whether there's something sort of culturally that embraces it in a way that Western cultures don't. And certainly maybe one of the things that I come out from your play with is this idea that it is another way of processing grief. But I'm curious to know, if you've looked at it through the lens of, culturally, this is actually quite important, this paranormal storytelling. And
yeah, I mean, one thing, I agree with that, and also on the opposite side of that, I think one of the reasons why I love ghost stories is that they kind of break all cultural barriers. Like every culture has ghost stories, and I'm just like, what is that about? Like how, at that point I'm just like, there has to be something real here, But I think in Japan. Yeah, that's interesting. It's such a reserved culture in so many ways, and I mean, and I would say in our play we actually like bump up against that too, about like what it is to be. I feel like the Japanese people in our play are not the Japanese people I usually see depicted, that are just like all they talk about is honor. Our characters are just like full of life and rebellious, and we have these like dark female protagonist and this like goofy dad and this like sleazy dude, and they're all Japanese characters, and that feels actually very authentic to me. And they're so full of life, and but also I can't say if this is cultural, but I can say for this play at least, there's something about these people that are so full of life and figuring it out, and they feel like they're just like, it's not torturous, but it's so hard for them to just be like trying to figure out all the stuff in their lives. And meanwhile, there are these spirits that just want one thing, which is to go home or be alive, and like, and it just tells me so much about like how we take what we have for granted. I think that's what really intrigues me about a ghost story. And I think that's like a backbone in our play.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also really interesting, without giving away too much, like there are moments when a ghost appears in the play that are, I think, a little frightening, and then there are other moments that are, I think, very moving when a ghost appears. And so I think that journey of even just in the course of 90 minutes, you get two different experiences that feel really, really different of this spirit entering into the world of the play.
Let's shift gears for a moment and talk about how you even write, Keiko. I'm curious, when you do write, do you start with a scene that just, not necessarily the first scene of the play, but do you just write a scene and take it from there? Or do you outline first? Or do you, I don't know, imagine a conversation and then that leads to some kind of plot? Like, how does that work for you?
Yeah, I'm a fast writer, I will say, once I know what I'm doing, which I think is the hard part. I think I usually try to write what I think is the first scene. That often ends up not being the first scene, and that's okay. But I start with the first scene, and I usually have something that I want to write towards. I have an idea for an ending, either an image, or maybe it's a scene, maybe it's a phrase, like a piece of dialogue or something, or maybe a stage picture, and then I can write towards that. And I think the stage picture on this, I kind of always knew what it was going to be, even if, but so then it's just about like experimenting. Sometimes I'm just like, I think a reason why my plays often have, there is one track on this play that has 11 costume changes. Because as you recall, if you watched Exotic Deadly, I do like to write. I like to give some of the actors just a real big workout where they're playing like a million roles. But one of the reasons I like to do that is, I want to fill the world. I want to make it feel really rich. But I also if I get stuck, I'm like, well, what if this? What if they're having a conversation with who's working at maybe they need gas, or, and they are stopping at a gas station. What does that scene look like? And often those scenes don't end up in the play, or maybe a snippet of that conversation will end up between two main characters or something. But there's something about just consistently experimenting. And what's, I think, really useful about this exercise, even though it's also laborious because you have to sift through so much stuff, but what's great about it is it makes you really not precious about your writing, because that way when we finally get to a draft, I'm like, okay, I like 30 pages of this 95 pages. I have 30 great pages, that's just, it just makes you feel really open to changing. And that means that I think an issue that a lot of greener writers, or not even greener, a lot of other writers have, is that they're so precious about their work and they're so nervous about sharing something that's not perfect right at the beginning. And I think that really gets in your way of just it should be a collaboration. So if you can't share something that's a little bad, you're never actually going to get the thing that's wonderful. You're just you're cutting off your limbs trying to get it's yeah. And so even in the last even today we've incorporated 10 new pages. So
and then we put them in and cut half of one of the pages.
Yeah.
Even as we're putting it in. So it's a constant.
Yeah. What you'll see.
Opening.
Yeah. What you'll see today has never been performed before. Yeah.
Keiko, does your brain? Do you have an actor brain versus a writer brain, or is it all the same brain?
I think it's the same brain. It just makes my ask for actors really specific sometimes. And I think that one has made me better at the other. I think that now as an actor, whenever I'm approaching a script, which I actually don't act very much anymore, but I'm always like, what is the active choice? What am I doing here? How am I contributing to the story? Instead of just, I think theater is such a team sport that instead of what am I thinking in this scene? What am I? It's like, what is the main story and what role does my character play in making that whole story live? Is just a different way of looking at things. And I think the vice versa of that is, when I'm writing as an actor, I can start to think I think I write really juicy roles for actors, actually, and I think one of the reasons is because I'm always trying to make sure that they're changing each other, that they're activated, that they're doing something, that they're bringing something in from the last scene we saw them in, and they're bringing that in, and then they're different by the end of this next scene, And so I think that makes it. I truly think the multi-hyphenate thing just makes you better at everything you're doing.
Yeah, agreed. And Sivan, as someone who works a lot with new plays, and it seems to me, I was looking at your list of work on your website, and you yourself also generate original work.
Not so much.
Oh, well. But what is it about that new play process that seems to have really clicked with you as an artist?
Well, it's thrilling. I mean, it's I really believe in 2025, making theater is kind of a miracle. The number of people it requires, the amount of money it takes to the trust that you have to have in each other, an audience to come and share the same air. And to do it for new plays, you're birthing a universe. I actually get a little holy about it because I'm you're creating an entire universe for the very first time. You're birthing it into the world and saying what are the rules of this world and what are the ways this world is going to function and what does it sound like and what does it feel like and how can we imagine it? And I think I came up on the classics, but new plays has really been where my heart is because I love the collaboration with a writer and unlocking something together. And I love the stories that are being told and the universes that we're envisioning together. So, I think I'm a director who really operates from the limitation breeds creativity standpoint. So like I direct within a container. Like I'm not directing with an unlimited budget in an unlimited size theater with, you know, absolutely no restrictions. Like I'm directing a play at a theater in a particular configuration of seats with a set amount of scenic budget and you know, a set amount of deck support and a number of rehearsal days that I have to get it there by. And so, you know, my approach is very like, how can we imagine and create this universe inside of that set of limitations, and how can we push ourselves beyond what we're dreaming of? But yeah, I love new plays. I really do. There's such an exciting generation of writers that I have had the privilege of coming up with, that I just continuously get to meet. And this is, you know, Keiko and my first time working together, and it's just been such a pleasure. And I feel thrilled when I get to meet a new writer that I feel like we have the same set of values about what we're trying to create in this industry. We're envisioning a different kind of representation for communities that we care about. We're imagining a different way of running a room that feels collaborative and generative and experimental. So yeah, I just love it. I don't know, I'm a new plays gal.
We love it too. I'm going to open it up to the audience for any questions you may have. So if you do have a question, just go ahead and raise your hand and someone will come to you with a microphone. Don't be shy. Oh, here we go.
Hi, really excited to see this tonight. I'm really into theater lighting. So can you tell me some of your stuff that you've done with that?
Totally.
That I can be watching
Maybe I'll
out for.
start here, which is just that lighting in the round is really different than lighting in a proscenium, right? Because the lights could bounce into the audience's faces from different angles, and so you have to really think about the geometry and the math of lighting in the round really differently. And we have a really shiny deck, so that's also a consideration when you're thinking about the lights and the instruments that you want to put in the air and sort of what configuration. But lighting is a time-based piece of the storytelling puzzle. And it can really, it tells your eye where to look. It tells you what's the most important thing to pay attention to in a scene. Just this afternoon, you know, I was like pushing and pushing on this one moment that we were working on in tech of like, no, I need more light on this one thing. I need the audience to really know they're supposed to look here now. And lighting is how you do that. It's like, if you don't have any actors on stage, actors can throw the focus. So like, you'll know to look over here if I go, you know? But if you don't have an actor on stage to do that, to throw the focus, lighting is how you throw the focus. And it's really about carving space and you can use it rhythmically, you use it spatially. Our lighting designer, Mexley Cuisine, has done like, I don't know how many plays at the Globe now.
She did H6. If any of you got to see that last year in the Festival Theater, she's fabulous lighting designer.
She's a fabulous designer, and she just really understands how to use the space and use the color palette that we have, use the bounce of the floor really effectively. And you'll see there's actually a couple of practical lighting instruments in the world of the play, which means scenic elements that light up, basically. There are these signs that hang above the stage that all light up and have a different color palette. There are some practical instruments on the deck. There's practicals that fly in. So she has a whole toolkit that she's playing with to sort of take us from scene to scene, from universe to universe, to give us something to look at while a transition is happening down here. You know, it's all about how you kind of keep the rhythm of the story moving along. Yeah, I don't know if that was...
Also, she's a UC San Diego grad.
She
also, go Tritons.
Any other questions? Yes, let's give you the mic right down here. Thank you. It's just so people in the back can hear your question.
Hi, I just want to say thank you so much for everything you've been saying, and also hi, Sivan, you're awesome. I was just curious about what's exciting for you about like doing this show in San Diego specifically. Like what kind of things here in the air are interacting with the play, and either in ways you anticipated or didn't anticipate?
Yeah, I mean, this is I'll say just Southern California wise, going into final rewrites before rehearsal for this play, as I am based in LA right now, and my husband and I are in San Diego probably like half the year anyway, so we're just kind of always back and forth. But with the fires that have been happening in Southern California, writing a play about the tsunami and, you know, the devastation from after that, but specifically we talk about in the play a lot about like the real estate and exploitation and you know, like people do have to rebuild, and also there is a sense of, but are we just supposed to like, what about, these places that meant something to us? And so I think that there's just like this big conversation in the play about, what is a middle ground? Like, how do we, and also just, like there are people that have to make hard calls to say, like this is not a safe place for you to live anymore. But also like that's someone's house. And so so just going into, just hearing about, especially in LA, hearing about the, the people people rent being hiked up people trying to hike up the rent 300% or something because people are looking for houses. That it just felt so connected to what we've been working on, and it's really informed, I think, a lot of the story and the play too.
Yeah, I mean, because I think there's also a piece of natural disasters like this, or man-made disasters, depending on how you think about climate change. But I think there's the loss of life, of course, and then there's the loss of like a place that you loved and all your things in it, and what that means for a person or for an individual, for a family, for like a legacy. The family in this play didn't lose their home in the tsunami, but they were one of the lucky ones. And so many people in this place did and lost everything. And so sort of how you juxtapose those things. Another thing I've been really aware of working on this play in San Diego in particular is that Ishinomaki, where the play is set, is a city on the coast. And the water is a huge part of the life of the people there. Just like being by the water, being at the pier, was before the tsunami, it was a fishing economy that has really dramatically decreased after the tsunami due to, I don't have to get into that, but basically the presence of the ocean and the presence of the coast in a community, just how you even orient yourself geographically, like in the city. Oh, just drive down the water and you'll see it. Drive down the coast, a little bit up the coast, and just the presence of the ocean and the power of that natural thing and how it informs life feels really connected between San Diego and this part of Japan.
And I just to say, like, San Diego, I love San Diego. I'm not just saying this because I'm in front of you all. Every day I walk in, I'm just like, San Diego's the best city. But one of the things that I love about it so much is that it's a city that feels like a town. Sometimes, it has like a neighborhood feel. I was here for grad school, and I come here. It's probably like 7 years. I feel like that I've been like in and out of San Diego, and Portland is kind of like that too. Or it does feel like. Yeah, it feels like a town, and I think that to be able to premiere a play, it's going to be in a city, but to do it in a city that feels like a community, like has that town feeling, I think does feel so right to me. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, I wanted to ask in the creation of this play, whether it was the writing or the directing of it. I know island cultures in general are very spiritual. They believe in a lot of these things. And I don't even know the full story of this, but from what you've said, how important was it that the audience you were going to play to, whether as the writer or the director, how important was it that they believed in spirits? I mean, did it matter to the writing of it or to the directing of it? Is it meant to just entertain, to thought-provoke? What was your purpose in creating it for the stage? Because I think it would kind of take a different approach. If you thought people in the audience didn't believe in spirits, would you tell the story differently? Or is it meant to be mythical, you know what I mean, creatively? I'm just curious.
I would be really interested to talk to you specifically after the play and see what you think. To me, I am such a, I'm not a religious person at all, but I am I do, but I do think of like spirituality a lot. I think I just don't know the right words or language for it. So to me, it's like, it's certainly not just to entertain. I think that for me, when I think about spirits, Exotic Deadly is a little bit like this too. It kind of just makes me think about where we come from and our families and our ancestors, and that is, whether you believe in ghosts or not, we are living on from our ancestors. You can't, they are alive through us in some way. So I feel like, I don't know if this really answers your question or not, but I do feel like in this play we are asking people to take a dive with us, and my hope is that people walk away feeling Oh wow! Like just a lot of complicated feelings. I think one of them is a connection to maybe that part of them, and also maybe there will be a bit of longing and thinking about those who are no longer with us. You tell me afterwards.
Yeah.
In 100 minutes or so.
I'd also add, I don't think this is a spoiler, but I think our central character starts the play also not believing in ghosts or spirit. I don't think she enters she has ghost thrust upon her. She doesn't seek out spirit. And so I think her journey through the play of kind of dealing with the supernatural and how she even relates to it and whether she feels like welcoming it in, whether she wants to go towards that, whether she wants to push it away. Those are tensions that character is experiencing in the play. So it's not presented as by default, we just assume that all our audiences will be on board with the idea of spirit just as all the characters in the play are. They're not. They struggle with it. They're wrestling with it, whether they want to face it head on, whether they want to flee from it. And so I think regardless of what your own belief system is or relationship to the quote unquote supernatural or spirit, I think the play doesn't require you to believe in order to engage with the play. There will be someone playing a ghost, and so that's real whether or not you believe in it. But I do think it takes you on a journey regardless of your belief system. And I actually don't know that I would change anything if I thought an audience wouldn't believe or would believe. I don't know that I would. I would have to think about that.
Yeah, there is this appears early on and is interacted with a couple times in the play. When I growing up, our family in Japan, we have a shrine and you open it up and there's photos of your ancestors and you offer them food and drink and you light incense, and so there is an honoring and bringing them in, and that we also encounter in the play too. So I think it's also just. Yeah, I also just think of it as a cool opportunity to invite people into a new culture and a new way of thinking that will, I'm not telling you what to do or think, but hey, you're welcome to join us for 90 minutes and see if you like it.
And it definitely haunts me. In the opening notes of the play, Keiko actually wrote 100% of taxi drivers in this region of Japan report picking up a ghost passenger. And so when I first read that in the opening notes of the play, I was like, whoa. Okay. And then you read the play and it's okay, there are many, many people who claim to have had this experience in this place. And when a place is affected by a natural disaster, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily someone who believes in ghosts. And maybe I do, maybe I don't, but that is that's something you have to contend with. There's a whole group of people who are we've had someone in the back of our taxi, pretty sure, And it's not one of them, it's all of them. So something to contend with, definitely.
Well, when I think about the scale of loss of the tsunami, right? I think I read somewhere it was something like 20,000 people in the space of the first 2 hours, something crazy like that. That's how many lives were lost. And that scale is just hard to comprehend. There's something about this story that sort of provides a vocabulary to really deal with it. And I really think that's what just makes it so beautiful in some ways, right? That we are, as human beings, grappling with this idea of what's just beyond, One last question, Dr. Silver, and then we got to go. So one more.
Wow.
I've seen you in a number of
yes, definitely
plays.
put that on mic.
Yeah, and
was a
you
compliment.
in a number of plays. So you've picked your storyline and you picked your character. How, as being an actor, does it influence your dialogue?
Yeah. We we touched on this a little bit earlier. Of just, I do think, I think that when you're I read my entire play at some point out loud to myself, by myself, playing all of the parts
I
and
do that
reading all the
too.
stage directions. You do it too?
I read it. That's the first thing I do when I get a play. Is
You
I read it out loud to myself.
And it does help. There are times, of course, where I'm like, I don't know why you can't make it work. I can make it work, Don't ever tell an actor I said that. No, but I kind of just I don't know what the problem is sometimes. But I think the great gift about think that's a very wonderful compliment. I think I'm a better writer than I am an actor, and because of that, I can be like, okay, I know that there's a version of this that works because I in my head I could do it, but also I'm just so excited to bring actors that I think are even more suited and even better in, and they do things where I'm like, oh my god, I never even thought of that, and so again, it's like I'm not being too precious. I can bring in a draft. I can be like, okay, we have something here. It feels alive. I because I'm an actor, I can also make sure that it's like moving. That we're never just something we really fight against is just like sitting in sentimentality, sitting in feelings. We want characters to keep moving forward and trying to affect each other. And I think that's the best thing that being an actor can bring. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Well, I just want to say it is such a joy to have these artists with us. Thank you, Keiko. Thank you, Sivan, for being a part of this.
Thank you.
The Old
Thank you
Globe.
for having
Thank
us.
you so much.
Yeah, thank you.